Hey, what's going on? Welcome back to the Typical Creative Podcast. I'm Ashton, your host, and it's really good to have you. As you may have noticed, this is a video, and for the first 10 episodes of this podcast, it was just audio, but now I'm going to be including video because honestly, I think it just enhances the experience of the conversations that we're having about creativity, about finding, honestly, just the enjoyment of life and things that we didn't even recognize. So if you enjoy this podcast, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and if you're really enjoying it, you can consider sharing it out or even binging the playlist of all the podcasts that you missed. So check those out. They're going to be in the description as well as on my channel. If you have not heard of this podcast yet, this is going to be a really good episode for you to kind of get a pulse on what we've been doing, how we've been how I've been navigating this conversation about creativity and pulling it out of more than just the fine arts world. So not to say the fine arts world doesn't have creativity, we just already know that. And I think that for a lot of people, they've missed out on a lot of things by saying they're not creative, because everyone is creative. And so this podcast is essentially just exploring the ways that creativity shows up in the world that are maybe a little unexpected. And so today's guest, I think, is going to really drive this point home, and I'm super excited for you to get to meet Jared Scrowther. And honestly, this conversation was just really fun. I'm recording this after the fact, so I know what it's about, and I think you're really going to love it. There's a few snippets out on social media already, and I don't want to waste any more time, so here is Jared Scrowther.
For some reason, the first word that popped into my mind when you said that was like seeker.
Ooh.
Yeah, seeker.
What's that mean?
I think it means that I feel like I'm always trying new things.
Yeah. I think that's a pretty good description of you.
Yeah. Or like maybe not necessarily trying new things, but just like I'm interested. I always seem to be like interested in like different things. You know, seeker. Like I seek out what's different, what I like. I don't know.
So are you saying you like pursue things that are odd and out of the norm, or that you just generally find interest in a lot of things?
Yeah, probably the second one. I can't really think of anything that's like, I'm not a weird person by any means. Like I'm not.
Yeah, totally.
You know what I am? No, I'm not weird.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah, I mean, I just think like, it's just like, oh, that sounds interesting. Let me try that. Oh, that looks cool. I'm going to try that for a little bit. Yeah. Oh, that looks cool. I'm going to, figure out. So it's like, I think more of that. Like, I'm not scared to try new things, I don't think.
Yeah, and at the same time, I don't think you're like a jack of all trades. Like, you're not a Swiss Army knife type of person necessarily. Like, you have a lot of skills, but I still see you kind of diving in deeper. And not just kind of being surface level skilled at a lot of things. Yeah. You end up being like, oh, I really like this. I'm going to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
how long those things last, might be a different story.
Yeah.
But
that also may just be people who are more creative minded, like maybe more artistically aware of their own creativity. Like, just them sort of searching or maybe discovering different voices that are created by technology or created by opportunity.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, I think everybody at all points in their life, whether you're 5 or 50, you discover new opportunities and you're like, whoa, I didn't know I could do that. It reminds me of the stupid TikTok of wow, you can really dance.
Oh gosh, that's been circulating in my office at work, and it's not,
as stupid as it is. I just love that it's sort of like, wow, you can actually do something.
Yeah,
like you can actually do something you didn't know you could. Like that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So seeker, I like that a lot. What's another phrase or word or something that you would kind of give yourself?
Chill.
Yes.
Yeah, I think everybody that I meet, everybody I get to know, like there's just this universal quality about me that everyone agrees of just like, oh yeah, Jared, he's a chill guy. He's super chill.
I would love to see you angry.
I don't
like, I've seen you flustered before.
Yeah, I don't really get much past that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't really
Maybe you'll break at some point.
And when that happens,
that'd be nice.
I think when that happens is, I think I'll be terrified as well.
Yeah, no, I think that's a lot of people, like anyone who's familiar with Enneagram. You've identified as an Enneagram 9.
I do.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'm an Enneagram 8. Mm-hmm. So we're both in that gut type where you're asleep to your anger and I'm very much awake to my anger.
Yeah.
And I just think it's so, as someone who isn't afraid of saying, hey, that's wrong, I don't like that. Or like being very, like anger is a very controlled emotion for me. Mm-hmm. It's not like, it's not a first time gun user. Like I'm a skilled archer with anger.
Oh,
because I've just done it so much. I don't shoot things I don't mean to.
Right. Yeah.
Now that I'm older and more self-aware.
Yeah. I like that. That's a good analogy. But
it's like you might just not have handled those weapons like much because you're kind of like, well, I just don't. But you're very familiar with them, with the anger anyway, because it's kind of in there.
Yeah. And I think I've learned to not necessarily just, it's not that like I've never used it before or maybe I've never experienced it. It's just like, I know how to not let that come out. Right. You know, like it's like, I'm very aware of situations that could make me very angry. Sure. But I think I'm just like, I just choose not to be, you know?
Right. Well, and it might even for you, tell me if this is just totally wrong and I should shut up. But for you, it may even come out just in softer ways that people normally, anger is this big explosive emotion. Yeah. And for you, it may actually just be a different, like it may just be a more gentle stream of anger. So it might come out in a drawing.
Yeah. And when you said like
out in a story.
Yeah.
But it doesn't necessarily mean you're like, breaking dishes in the kitchen.
Yeah. And I mean, I think even when you said, I think I've seen you flustered before, it's like, that probably actually was me angry, maybe that's just how it came out, Yeah. Definitely. I feel like I get more like annoyed and more like flustered rather than like upset or angry. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So,
and just remove yourself from the situation.
Yes, very much so.
I'm out.
Yep.
This is going to be bad. I'm going to leave.
Yep. I'm going to crawl into my shell.
See ya.
Into my own little world.
That's fine. I mean, coping, there's this thing about coping that a lot of people don't like is that it sounds like this like sad thing. Like coping mechanisms are really good.
Yeah, they are.
It's when they become like, it's when you only lean on them or like you lean on them too much, you depend on coping mechanisms that they become bad. It's like all things in moderation again. And I think coping is one of those things where it's like, no, there are genuinely important times in your life where coping mechanisms help you.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I agree.
Anyway, I don't want to talk about that forever because, it's, whoa, Ashton's getting intense classic.
Yeah.
You have a third one on the top of your head?
Oh.
Like, let's recap. So seeker.
Chill.
Yes. It's funny that you said chill and I got super intense. That's just not the most you and me thing.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that fits just very well like the conversation we just had.
And I'm just like
oh man, a third one. I'd say like genuinely like always in a fairly good mood. Like I'm always pretty happy.
Yeah. Would you say that comes out in like positivity?
Yeah, definitely. I'm a glass half full kind of guy pretty much all the time. I mean, I can definitely like, I have my moments and I sometimes love like sitting in the glass half empty stuff, but I think like naturally I kind of just like, I go to the glass half full, very, very optimistic person.
I would love to experience that someday.
Well, hey,
I feel like Michael Scott saying like, I'd love to be part of an inside joke someday.
Optimistic. That's probably a better word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all right.
Optimistic.
Yeah. Optimism is one of the things that I wouldn't say I like struggle with it. I just don't ever think about it. Mm-hmm. Like, and I don't really think about pessimism either. Like I'm really just a realist.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, it starves a lot of things from its ability to dream, but it also starves like, I don't know, all the rest of the stuff. But I would love to learn more from optimistic people on like where the optimism comes from.
Yeah.
Like, what does it look like to be optimistic in casual scenarios and creative scenarios and work scenarios and relationship as a parent, as a spouse, as a, whatever, like different optimists can offer different things like that. So be kind of cool.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
I was so let me just recap. You said that you're a seeker. So you're just looking out, you're looking for things that are interesting.
Mm-hmm.
You pursue interesting things.
Yeah.
But you do that with optimism and with a chill attitude. And
Very
I think
much.
That's just like,
I think that's a very good description of who I am.
Nail on the head. Is that right? Hit the hammer. The nail.
Hit the hammer with the nail.
Hit people with hammers. No, is that what you just said? No.
Once again.
No. It's like Jake Bennett was on the podcast a few episodes ago, and he probably will hate that I'm referencing this, but he had a song that he was doing for fun when we were in college that was about longboarding, and there was a line. Which, if you don't know longboarding, when people go really fast on hills,
I know longboarding.
They say they bomb hills.
Yeah.
And he had this line in the song that's like, "Bomb hills, not people."
Oh my gosh, I love that.
And it's just so classic.
That's good.
It was pretty.
I want that
glorious.
on a t-shirt. Jake, if you're listening, make me a t-shirt.
Yeah, I would buy a bomb hills, not people.
Exactly.
That's
there's a market for that.
Yeah, it's ready.
Yeah, it's ready.
The market is
out.
primed.
Yeah, when that song came out, the world wasn't ready for that line, but it is now.
I think I could be remembering this wrong, but I'm pretty sure the song started with like this cheetah growl.
Oh.
Or like a jaguar, like some kind of like row, row.
Nice.
So anyways, that has literally nothing to do with anything. No. But let me ask you about this. So you are someone who enjoys writing.
Yeah.
You enjoy filmmaking. You enjoy fine artsy things.
Yeah.
But you've also done a lot of other sort of nuts and bolts type of things too. So how do you like look at the framework of creativity and let it sort of wander beyond the fine art stuff? Like, do you ever like, as someone who's constantly thinking about creativity, even in your work and whatever, like, do you sort of like, does it put that box into that space?
No.
Or does it just spill out?
Yeah, I think finding it outside of those fine artsy things is just seeing the creativity around you like all the time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like seeing like the art in just like your everyday world.
Yeah.
And I think that breaks out of the box of what art is typically defined as and what creativity is typically defined as. But when you see that, you can still enjoy art. You can still enjoy creativity outside of the realm of like, this isn't a painting, this isn't a movie, this isn't a drawing,
right.
This isn't a song, but it's just the world around me and it's artistic.
Yeah.
And when you can see that, when you can see the art in the mundane of everyday life, that to me is like, I try to like look at life that way because like, I don't know,
Yeah.
like to me, like that's what makes life interesting and what makes life fun. And I'd say even to a degree worth living sometimes.
Yeah.
Is just being able to see those things and being like, hey, I don't live in my own little bubble. Like I live in a world full of people and places and things and sounds and noises and colors. And when you see that, that's not, I don't think how people would typically define fine art, but like it is artistic.
Yeah. Well, I do think you have to have a distinction between fine art and then creativity.
Yeah.
Because creativity, and this is really the heart of this podcast when I started it, was like, you don't have to be this sort of like starving artist type of person to be creative. Like, well, I think that there's definitely a good distinction to say, no, I'm a creative person. And maybe that means that you work in some sort of creative fine arts type of employment or that's how you make your living or whatever. But I also think it's valuable just to note that like creativity lives beyond that because so many people, like you're saying, it's like, it kind of gives the reasons to live.
Yeah.
Like when dread is right there, when depression and darkness and sadness, whatever else is like there, like sometimes having a reason to live can't just be art,
right?
Like fine art, right?
Yeah. No. Yeah. You have to see things beyond it.
Is what actually brings that out. And I think some people cut themselves off from it, whether it's from their own woundedness, growing up in schools where, only things like sports were highlighted and maybe they didn't even have like things like band, choir, art, pottery, whatever else. And I just wonder if, like I've actually seen this even, like, I wonder if people who disconnect from the creative mentality, when they reconnect with it, how much happier they are, or how much, not necessarily happier, but maybe the fuller range of emotions and existence exists for them. Cause you're really kind of just trimming off the highs and lows and becoming this like sedated human that kind of lives in like, well, I'm not bad, but I'm not good. And that's like, I think that's the worst place to be. I would rather be like feeling the contrast of life, so that when something tastes really good, I know it tastes good, but it's only because I tasted something that was way too salty. You know? Yeah. You have to have contrast in life. Yeah. So I really like that. I like that you're kind of like look for mundane stuff. And I actually think the way that you post stories on Instagram, I always thought this, it's funny because like in my own journey of like thinking creatively, probably 4 years ago, I don't even know if that's right. Anyway, years ago, I would see posts from people who posted like you and be like, why are they doing that? Because it was so like, cool food. But it was like, or it would be like, why is that in black and white? Like cameras are better than that. Why would you go back to a previous day? And it's sort of this, it's like, but for you, it's like an expression of the emotion or expression of like the vibe that you're going for or something, and I get that now. But it's like, even for myself, like I actually allowed myself to widen the range of contrast, but it helps me to appreciate other people. It's like I have greater gratitude for people like you who already do that, who see that range, because I'm not limited to my smaller range as much. So I think there's something that's really cool about that. What was like the most recent like art outside of fine arts that you've seen?
I experience it every day on my drive to work. Yeah. So I strategically, there's, I work at St. Paul's my wife and I live, kind of on the other side of town. And so there's a lot of different ways that I can get to the church, but I choose to, drive down Main Street every morning. Because every morning something different is happening on Main Street, like every morning, like you see different people, outside, you see, and so like there's so much going on, but there's also so much that's not going on. And you you kind of have a choice to see like which one you want to see. Do you know what I mean? It's like you kind of have the choice to just tune everything out and just make it a drive to work down just a main street in the middle of Joplin. It's like, or you can choose to see, okay, like what's actually like going on this street right now as I'm driving. And like when you choose to see that, you see a lot of really cool things. And so I think like for me, like that's just, I love looking at the world like that. And maybe that's just because I'm an optimist. Sure. But it's like, I love just driving places or like looking, being like, hey, like where do I, what streets do I want to drive down on my way to this place? Like, what am I going to see like on my way there? And I think part of the not knowing of like, it's going to be a different experience every time you do it. I don't know. To me, that's kind of artistic in a way, it's like, I get to choose to see how I want to see things. And that's cool.
I see, well, two things. One, I saw this green clown wig in the trash can.
I saw that on your Instagram. I thought that was funny.
And that was like on Main Street.
Yeah.
But it's just kind of funny. I was like, what is that?
Yeah.
And ended up sharing it to my social media, and then Joplin Toad really liked it and shared it to their social media. But it's just kind of funny, like, how social media, I think the people that we are continuing to like more and more, whether it's live streamers or podcasting or, whatever, it's like, it seems like the trend is not necessarily that quality needs to go away from the production side, like how good the image looks or how good it sounds or whatever. But that's so secondary, and it's becoming more and more secondary because some people still just care about that, pretty much only that. But it's becoming so secondary to people being real.
Yeah.
And it kind of sounds to me like when you drive down Main Street, you're just looking for life.
Yeah.
Like you don't necessarily need it to be like, look, the street cleaner came through. There's no debris anywhere. And like everyone just trimmed all the trees and there's new flowers, and it doesn't have to be a certain way. It just has to be.
Right. Yeah. And I think, and like I said, that's different every day, like what that is,
yeah.
you know? And so like I get to experience the same stretch of road every morning in a different way every day. Yeah. And like, to me, that's kind of something that like recently I've come to just finding that I've been obsessing with, is just like looking at just this life every day, you know, just like looking at like looking at how you naturally frame things when you look at things, and like seeing that like perspectives that otherwise you wouldn't see, and just like really being like attuned to those things.
Yeah.
Because I think it provides you just kind of this different outlook on the normal things, you know, that you would just passively exist in, you know? And so it's like, well, what if you chose to just not passively exist in it, but to just like see things for what they are, or what even they could be, or potential that they have for something. And to me, there's beauty in that. And and like I said, that's kind of just been an obsession of mine, and really just an inspiration lately as far as like my own creativity goes, and things that I'm interested in doing or want to do, is just like inspired by just the mundaneness of things that like we exist in every day. So yeah,
that's I think that perspective is really helpful, because a lot of people really hate that every day is so mundane. And so is that something that you feel like you have kind of always just had that mentality, and you become more aware of it as you got older?
Yeah.
I wonder for people who are maybe more like me, who maybe don't naturally have that tendency, if that would be one of the best ways to sort of push into growth.
Yeah.
Is to kind of say like, you know, it's like for someone who's maybe more pessimistic or realistic or whatever, you know, a realist, whatever term you want to use, not that optimists have head in the clouds or anything, but I kind of see it as like for a photo editor, right? You have highlights and shadows.
Right.
And so if you want a high contrast photo, you need to be able to push the highlights up and the shadows down. And so to have the contrast gives you a more, just like you can understand more distinctly what's happening in the image. And I think that for pessimists, we really are good at just pushing the shadows down.
Yeah.
And we can explore some of those things. And for optimists, it's a little easier to push the highlights up. And so, you know, the range is more like, which side do you need to push on?
Yeah.
Which side do you maybe need to do a little bit of work? And if you're real tired, maybe it's not a good time to do work. Maybe it's time to just kind of be where you are. But I love that. I'm gonna have to chew on that a little bit more.
Yeah. And I'm still just kind of fleshing out what that means too, and what that looks like. But like I said, it really is something that I can't really escape anymore. You know, like even just things like going to the grocery store. It's like, I see people differently, and I see the things I'm doing differently. I see what's in front of me differently, you know? And so it's, I don't know. I don't know what causes that, but like the more that like I'm aware of it, the more I realize how much stuff I've done in the past, like projects I've done or things I've worked on, how much that stuff has inspired those things.
Oh yeah.
And I didn't know it then, but like I'm seeing that now, and I'm still kind of understanding what that means to me as a creative now still, but like, I don't know.
That's good though.
Yeah.
You know, I think if you aren't still trying to understand something, that you maybe have become too complacent. So sometimes people get nervous about like, well, I just can't figure this thing out. I'm like, good. I'm glad you can't figure it out. Like, that tells me that you're trying to do something.
Yeah.
That tells me that you're doing some work, whether it's you're trying to make an idea function. You're trying to get a story out. You're trying to, you know, make the handle on your door not wiggle. Like, whether it's practical or more idea based, you're working on something. And that, I think, is when you have zero momentum in life, I think is when you start to become bored. Like, for instance, let's go back to you driving down Main Street every day.
Yeah.
You're in motion. you're not stopping to just look at a weed that's growing out of the concrete and being like, man, nobody tries.
Yeah.
You know, you're not just sitting there, and you're not also just doing that every day.
Right.
And so by going in motion through it, you're just like noticing something that maybe was there yesterday or maybe it wasn't. Mm-hmm. You're noticing something that changes that's the same. Mm-hmm. And there's just so much about it because it's in motion.
Right.
Because you're actually in progress through something rather than just sitting. And I think that's a big, you know, in terms of depression and anxiety and all kinds of other things, which I don't want to downplay that that's a real thing for a lot of people because it definitely is. Mm-hmm. But I wonder how much of the work can also be added to it. Yeah. You know, that medication can definitely help people. But when you pair that with counseling or you pair that with like intentional living, exercising, eating better, maybe going for walks, trying to take on mentalities like driving down Main Street and seeing new things. I just wonder how much more you can have, how much more progress you could have in that battle with those things too.
Well, and this is what I love about motion. You know, motion changes perspective, you know, and so it's like the more you move, whether that's me driving down Main Street, you know, the as I'm driving, the perspective of everything around me is changing.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's a good metaphor for life too. You know, like the more that we move, the more that we're in motion, the more the things around us, the things that we see, the things that we deal with will change because we're going to be in a new spot, you know, every second. And so, I think just that idea of motion, I think, that can be powerful when you apply that to your life.
For sure. I think about it, one more metaphor and then we'll move on to something else. But I think about it in terms of water, and I just want to throw some shade at Oklahoma for naming their cities really poorly. Like Stillwater.
Oh yeah.
For instance.
Yeah.
I don't have any opinions on the actual city of Stillwater, but why would you, like, you might as well have named your city Swamp.
Yeah.
Or like distilled boggy swamp water.
Home of bacteria.
You know what I'm saying? I'm like, it's like, what about living water? Right. What about rushing water? What about like something else that's like actually shows some life, but still water?
Still
like,
water.
It's literally the one kind of water that like all it does is grow mosquitoes and
true.
algae and mold. And like, it's not a good name, but in kind of related to what we're talking about, it's like, let your life be a stream that actually like you don't cease to be water. You just go different places.
Right.
And so you may take on some attributes of the things that you're around, but the only thing that will happen by not being in movement is taking on algae, is taking on mosquitoes.
Yeah, exactly.
And so if you're stuck, maybe the best thing you can do is to realize that you're still water, but basically the way you steward your own self determines what kind of water you are.
Yep. Yeah.
So I don't know.
Never cease to be in motion.
I don't want to be too artistic about this because it's not really how I roll, but you know, let's go get water tattoos.
We're both going to go get waterfall tattoos after this.
Yeah, I'm going to get a waterfall falling into Stillwater, Oklahoma.
All right.
Okay, yeah. So you have written, well, I guess you just take some joy in writing, right?
I do. And that just recently.
That was kind of when I first met you. That was like the thing I knew most about you was you play guitar and you liked writing.
Really? Okay. I'm trying to think when we first met. First met.
When my brain remembers meeting you, which caveat, I have a terrible memory.
Yeah.
I hope that doesn't lead to really bad things as I get older, but I'm sure it will. But anyways, from when I remember meeting you, those were like kind of the prominent things, was that you were a guitar player and that you enjoyed writing.
Yeah. I
didn't know really if you were good at either of those things because I'd never read anything you've written and I had never really heard you play guitar. But in terms of writing, why? Like I'm not really a reader of books, but I'm still a learner. Like I learn in a lot of other ways, but books are really hard for me because my body's not in motion. And so my brain is always distracted. So like I can listen to podcasts, I can read books, I can do all that kind of stuff if I'm like mowing the yard. Yeah. Because my body's kind of distracted. But otherwise I'm like, I could stretch or I could do this or, you know. So why why writing? Like, what do you like about it? What do you do? Like, what does it mean to you? Like, tell me a little bit about writing in itself. Like, whether it's art, whether it's practical, whether it's journaling, whether it's stories, like, what is it to you? Also, what's the origin of the universe? I realized that was such a big question for someone who maybe likes writing.
No. I mean, well, and like I said, like I really. So, I mean, I don't know. Growing up, like I can always remember being fascinated. I've always liked to read, and I've always liked, storytelling, and I've always, and so it was. I think we all can relate to that. Like we all like it in some way. Yeah. And I remember, growing up, like the first things I would write would be, like little songs or things like that. Like I've always loved music. And so I think that's kind of how it started, was just I combined, like my inspirations from different music when I was young, and then being like, okay, well, let me try to make that. And, but then, and so I think songwriting was probably the first thing that really kicked off the like writing thing. I remember a lot of, like when I look back at school, even, like elementary school, middle school, like the classes I remember most are like my English classes. And like, I remember taking a couple of creative writing classes in like, like late elementary school and like early middle school. And so like, those are the classes that I always remember the most of, like experimenting with writing poetry, with writing, short stories, things like that. Yeah. And I think as I just got older, I think I just like, I don't know, like, I think it was just kind of like, okay, I'm older now. Like what is my older self? Like what can my older self contribute to this thing I found when I was younger? With the more experience that I have, and just, things that maybe I am thinking about, or, whatever. So I don't think that I've ever had like this specific goal for writing other than just like what's something that's been on my mind a lot that I just want to like put into words. So maybe journaling, but I think also more so, wanting to creatively craft a story, I've never been a journaler, and like that's what's funny is like I can't sit down and just like I know people who have a daily journal, when they wake up in the morning, they write in their journal. Like I've tried that, I can't do it. And I think part of that is because
well, you can, you just don't like it,
right? Like I could if I wanted to, but I think it lacks the meaning, and I think maybe it's just because it feels too forced. Maybe I don't know, but I think all of the writing that I've done, it's been, I want to write this because of, you know what I mean? Like I've always had this goal of like, I've never just sat down and written something just to write something. Yeah. Like it's always like, I have this idea, I have, something inspired me, and I want to write this specific thing. So
what inspired you a while back, years ago now, when you were still in college, to write? It was years ago.
What were you going to say? Right, what? Because I've written a couple of things.
I think you were writing every day.
Okay.
You were trying to do, I can't remember what your goal was. It was like, I want to write 20 minutes every day at least. I want to write. There was some goal you had, but you were doing it every single day.
Yeah. So I'll talk about that. So that was fall of 2019.
Couple years ago.
Yeah, you're right. I know. If time's moving so fast yet so slow.
It's literally the middle of July
of 2021.
I
know. So you're right. Time has been irrelevant the past year and a half.
That's true.
So that was when I had the idea to write my first book. Yeah. Which was the biggest piece of writing that I've done ever. And still is.
Yet.
Probably will be. And so what that was, I was a student in college, and I just kind of like was in this creative rut a little bit. Like I remember, like around that time, I just wasn't doing a whole lot creatively.
What do you mean creative rut? Like what do you hope creativity feels like?
Okay, so I think in that
I don't really resonate with creative rut.
Yeah,
that's just my existence. Yeah, and I just sometimes find creativity.
Yeah. So I think in that period, what I thought I was going to be was like I thought I was going to pursue music, I think a lot more than I ended up really wanting to, or kind of like finding a passion to do. Like at that time I was like music, because I think part of it was just because I was so involved with, different worship ministries, places. So I was like experimenting with what that looked like in my own creative life.
It's an easier path to see.
Yes. Yeah. And more tangible, something,
19,
something that,
20 years old.
Yeah. And so I think, but I was feeling uninspired in the way, like, I felt like I was in this rut because I wasn't writing any music. I wasn't like, I was just playing a lot and for other people or for, for whatever. And so like, I was just in this, like, I'm not really creating music for myself, which is like, and to me, that was kind of like the definition of what creativity was for me, because that was what I thought I wanted to pursue the most.
Yeah. Great.
And so because that wasn't happening, I just felt like kind of stuck. And so and then I think I was literally just like laying on my bed, like waiting for my laundry to get done or something. And I was like scrolling on Facebook and I saw like an interview with Stephen King. And this was like late October, like almost the end of October that this was 2019. And so I just saw this like interview with Stephen King, and I can't remember how old the interview was, but he was just talking about how, just about things he's written and like how many books he's written. And I can't remember the number. I mean, it was like, dozens of books that he's written, his career. And so I thought, man, this man has written like this many books in his lifetime. And like here I am, 23 years old, laying on my bed, like never like, and like, to me, it was just like, I've never written a book before. And I think part of that was just like, it never even crossed my mind to do it, like until I saw that interview, and I was like, he's written this many books, I've written zero. What if I wrote a book? Just to say that I did it. That way, like when I'm as old as Stephen King, like I'm not going to have dozens of them under my belt, but I could say, oh yeah, I wrote a book one time.
Well, that's been his career, some too.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I mean, like that's just how my brain worked. I think that's that seeker mentality was just like, there's something else I haven't done.
That sounds cool. Let's try it.
Yeah, that sounds cool. Let me I think part of it was just I wanted to be able to say that when I was 80 years old that I'd written a book. You're the kid
every parent worries that they'll have, like, oh no, they're going to try drugs just because their friends are doing it.
No, probably not that extreme. But yeah, and that's really all. I think that's really all it was for me. Yeah. It was just this like, I've never done it. Let me see if I can do it. Yeah. Because and I think part of it was just being in a creative rut. Like I wanted that challenge. Nice. It was just like when I'm not feeling inspired to do anything else, just give me something completely different. And see like if I can do that.
Yeah. Well, and it's like a exercise of self-discipline too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which I think, I've been hearing this phrase a lot recently, just from different like videos or podcasts or like even talking to friends and stuff. But it's just the idea of, I like the metaphor that comes with it, but basically it's, you got to create a lot of crap so that there's fertilizer for the thing that succeeds.
Oh yeah. I like that.
And it's like, that doesn't mean you intentionally make crap. It just means that sometimes when you're trying, it doesn't turn out.
Right.
And so add it to the compost bin so that you can actually use that created material as fertilizer, as nutrients for the thing that will succeed.
Yeah.
You're stocking your cupboard for when it's time to cook. You're learning recipes for when it's time to make something.
Yeah. You're always going to take something away from even those failed attempts.
It's like you're staying fit so that your body can do things when you want to. Like someone's like, hey, let's go for a hike. And you're like, sweet, let's do it. Rather than saying, I can't because I'm not in shape.
Yep.
It's like you're doing these things where you're preparing basically yourself to be good soil.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I say that this was the end of October because it's relevant to like the discipline of doing it every day. So it actually, the timing of this, I think, was just meant to be for me to actually write a book. But it was that November was NaNoWriMo, was when NaNoWriMo started. And for those who don't know what NaNoWriMo is it's an acronym. Is that the right name?
It's a difficult word to say. Yeah.
Yeah. National Novel Writing Month.
Yes.
And so what that is it's an established like kind of organization,
maybe like a movement.
Yeah, it's like an established movement of people all around the world who decide for the month of November they're gonna write they're gonna set a word goal, an end word goal, and then they're gonna sit down and write every day, try to hit a daily word goal. That way at the end of the month they have like their final word goal,
which you take all the time that you normally spend shaving and commit to 2 movements at once. No shave November.
There you go.
And then write a book.
There you go. There you go. November is a month that you can,
It's like, I'd like to write as many words as hairs I would normally trim off my face.
Yes, exactly. And so, to me, I think that was really important, because that did provide like the discipline for me to actually like sit down and do it. Like, as much as I'm not a goal setter by any means. But I think having that structure there,
you could be.
Yeah, I definitely could be if I tried. But
you're just driven enough. I think it's
and that month specifically, I think having that as like this challenge did drive me to be able to be a goal setter. When you told so many people
you were doing that,
and
so it was kind of like,
and they encourage
everybody.
And the thing is so they have a website that you can go to and like actually register on their website, so that way like you feel like you're part of this movement that's happening, and they encourage you to tell people, because the more people you tell that you're doing something, the less likely you're going to be to not do it.
Exactly.
And so so I really did kind of take it I was taking it really seriously.
I think so.
And it ended up working. Like, I got to the end of the month and I had a finished novel. I think total it was almost 70,000 words.
Yeah. Which is like, that's like a
more
standard. More words than I've read in a long time.
Well, there you go. And so, I sat down every morning and I either wrote, I think, I don't remember exactly what word count, but like I tried to write like a chapter of the novel every day, which ended up being like 10 pages every day. So I try to write around like 10 pages every day. And it worked. Yeah, it worked really well. Like I got to the end of it. I had a finished product, and I think that experience, man, I learned so much from that. And I think I really found something that I was extremely passionate about that I didn't know I was before.
Right.
Because and it's not that I don't love music anymore. Like, I love music. I love playing music. I still love writing music. I still love doing all of the music things. But like, that's not that was my box before. Like that's all I thought I was doing creatively. And now it's like,
you just found another room.
I found another. Yes, exactly. Yeah. And it taught me. And the thing is like, I don't consider myself like an author, I'm probably not going to write another book, but like, I'm definitely going to take the things I learned from writing a book and write other things.
Sure.
And so like, it was an incredible experience for me. And I really I'm proud of the end result. It's not available anywhere. And I originally I was going to actually, like, I was in the process of self-publishing it. And I've got some, like proof copies and stuff of it, but the more that I've been sitting on it, like I'm not, it's not like 100%. If I were to release it, it's not like 100% ready yet. Like, I still have to do like a couple more edits of it and stuff, but I don't think that I've kind of decided I probably won't ever actually release it as a book, because it ended up being something that really was transformative to me, just to be able to get stuff out on paper. And it's not that I think it's a great story. I'm really proud of the story that I made. But at the same time, I really think it was a story that I needed to tell myself.
Yeah.
And it's not that I'm opposed to other people reading it. Like, if people want to read it, I will let you read a proof copy of it, but it's like, I don't know if I'm ever going to get to the point where I'm like, I'm ready to just like, sell this thing. Because like at the end of the day, like, I don't think that's necessarily the goal I had to write it. At least that's not the goal that I took away from it in the end. So
that reminds me, I'm not pulling my phone out to be rude. I'm pulling my phone out because it reminds me of a couple things. So this book, Christian Schultz, who's a local poet.
Yeah, I love Christian.
And Christian's an excellent, just a good dude, well-rounded creative person, and just a contributor to
Yeah, he's
local community.
He's an amazing writer.
Yeah, and he writes a lot of poetry. And there's a couple things I want to say. So first off, he just released a book called I'm Going Now, which I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, I did. And I'm going to pick it up soon.
He just wrote this Western for his grandfather before his grandfather passed away.
Yep.
And he'd never written a Western before, but he pretty much just did it for him.
Yep.
And so he wasn't even going to publish it or anything. And then I think he said something like 3 weeks before what would have been his grandpa's birthday, before his grandpa had passed away. Just a few weeks ago, he did a ton of work.
Yep. And he got it released for his birthday.
He got
his
released on
birthday.
his what would have been his grandpa's birthday.
Yeah, I think that's so cool.
And he hustled and did it in 3 weeks, but he basically had the art or the collection, the Western story, whatever it is, ready. Mm-hmm. And he did the work to do it. But I love that. Like, you don't necessarily have to have like the goal to be publishing stuff. And this is something I'm constantly learning is like, don't only make stuff to show things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, you should really figure out a ratio for yourself of how much stuff do you make compared to how much stuff do you share. Yep. And so if the only place the only time you're ever creating is when you're sharing, you're probably not sharing what you could be.
Yeah. And it's not going to, chances are it's not going to be like super authentic stuff either.
Right. And you're probably not even creating something that's necessarily meaningful to you, which I think is really interesting. Yeah. Just as a concept. And like I said, not an expert, just thought I'd mention that because I'm kind of learning that myself. Yep. And the other thing I wanted to say, I thought about this a little bit earlier. I wanted to mention it in our conversation and wandered a little bit, which is great, but I still want to say it. Yeah. Is poetry is kind of one of those hilarious things to me where it's ironic in its own means, like going back to some of the like seeing creativity in normal life. Yeah. Yeah. Poetry is the most, I think anyways, other than abstract art, poetry is like the most difficult to nail down. Yes. As far as like what is poetry. I agree. And yet I think it's important to still give it a distinct line to say that like, here's a box for it and everything outside of this is something else, but here's a box for poetry. Even if that is kind of a large box that gathers lots of things. But I think it's so hilarious that the things that like really practical people who think more practically in their terms of creativity and the like most sort of like out there creative people both talk about the same things, but through different lenses. Mm-hmm. So it's like, you may be talking about drinking your Folgers coffee, but this person completely rejects creativity, but is doing it in their own observation of the world around them and the flavors and whatever else. I'm not bragging on Folgers by any means. Just I'm using it as a brand because it's like Kleenex. You know, it's not really tissues aren't Kleenex. Kleenex is a brand. Right. Yeah. Anyway, but so like they're doing this coffee, and then over here this poet is describing coffee, and the like super practical person that rejects creativity is doing the same thing, but when they read the poem about coffee, they're like, "Why? What do you mean that's art? I just observed those same things, but I didn't make art." Yeah. And that is where I'd love to just sort of like take the scissors and chop that up and say like, nope, you did create art. Yeah. You just didn't know it. I agree. Yes. 100% you are creative. Yeah. You're just whatever. Blame whoever you want. We'll just blame the man. We'll blame society. Yes. The man is always a good one to blame. He did it. Yep. They did it. Yep. You know, the infamous, they should do something about this. Yes. Whoever they are. Has given a lot of people who sort of reject the idea of creativity this like, they still do it. They just like won't label it. Yep. I'm like, you do though. Like you do. If you would just see it, I think you'd open up yourself to so much more in life. Yeah. And I think that's just really hilarious. Like the contrast of poetry is well, and I mean it's the least creative but most creative. It's so weird. So on the topic of poetry, like writing that novel, that big story, I think inspired me to then even start writing things like more poetry. Sure. And I still occasionally write poetry, you know, because it's like because to me, like those are things that you can like look around in everyday life and like pull things from and like make something poetic out of it. Yeah. And also, you know, I married a dang good poet. And so she really inspired me to see things in a more poetic way. And she constantly does. And so I'm grateful for that too. But
So yeah, it's like I probably never would have written as much poetry as I have now if I hadn't written that book. You know, if I hadn't really, and even writing that book kind of shifted the way that I think about the things I talked about earlier, you know, just like seeing things because it's when you look at life in a mindset through like that lens, it's like there's stories here, you know, there's art here, there's things that you can make into like craft into something, whether that's a story or what, like you can take the things that aren't fine art related, see them for the fine art they can be.
They aren't.
Yeah. You know what I mean? And so, and like, that's what art is, you know? And so it's beautiful to like be able to take those things and make them into something, that it would be easy for you to see them not as that thing.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, and I also don't want to go so far to where it'd be like, everything is art.
No.
Because I think you then rob yourself of the contrast, right?
Yes.
The whole idea
absolutely.
of the highlights and the shadows. And so I don't want to be so ethereally, like such an ethereal artist that everything is just art. And I'm like, no, everything is not art. Everything is creative.
Yeah.
But art is art and practicality is practicality. They just share the same makeup.
They exist on the same plane.
Yeah. They share the same atoms. Like they have the same molecular structures.
Yeah.
They just come from a different purpose. Like it's the difference between, you know, using a hammer as a tool or a weapon.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. Exactly.
It's just a matter of and both are probably useful at times as both, right? Yeah. Like a hammer is a hammer, but how you use it is different. So like saying like, no, this is a tool. Well, it's like, well, someone used it as a weapon. So it's a tool, but it was used as a weapon. So let's call it a weapon right now. Or it's like, you know, someone used it as a tool. So don't call it as a weapon. Like,
right. Cause right now it's a tool.
They're roofing shingles. They're not using it as a weapon.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just see some of that as like, it is really, both sides kind of have the potential to rob the fullness.
They do. Yeah.
And I just want to be careful of that because I think it's really easy for people to say, well, I'm an optimist. I don't rob anything. Like, well, actually you do, because sadness is not a bad emotion. It's just an emotion.
And that's something that I'm learning. Like how I said earlier, it's like, I'm typically a glass half full person, but I've learned to be, I'm learning, I shouldn't say I've learned, I'm learning how to sit.
I've achieved.
I'm learning how to sit in the glass half empty mindset. Because that you're right, that there's so much value in doing that. Yeah. And that's not something that I really even realized until recently. Sure. And so, yeah, I'm still learning how to do that, but yeah, man, that's so important.
It's just the fullness. And to get a little spiritual on you, I've been thinking a little bit about this. My wife Taylor asked me a question. Something, I can't remember but basically the gist of the question was like, why evil? Which, okay, let me answer that quick little question, you know, but I do actually think that this concept of contrast, that God doesn't just do good, that he is good, right? He is the definition of good. He didn't define good. He just is. He was, he is, and he will be. And good is who he is. Like, he is good. But for good to exist, there has to be some sense of contrast. Yeah. Or rather, the existence of good then therefore creates contrast. Because otherwise everything's neutral. And I just wonder if there's this frustration I think a lot of us get into when you dive into spirituality, or even just in general. You look at the world and you're like, why is it so screwed up? Why is there so much stuff that's not working? And I can't help but find this sort of weird appreciation for the contrast. Yeah. It's sort of like, I can't help but kind of relate to Thanos when he thinks that, I mean, because his motive isn't to kill everybody, or kill half people. His motive is actually to give half people full life. Right. Yeah. So for him, he's in a situation where his ends justifies his means, which I don't think is good. I think it's a fake version of good. But I don't know. There's just there's a big concept here to wrestle with that I just would really challenge people who are only see things negative to start seeing things positive, because they're robbing themselves of something good.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you stay, maybe, you know, let's say the whole range is 100% slider and you have 40% exposure currently. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean you just shift what 40% you see. You expand to 50 to 60 to 70% range. So you don't like forget who you are and the natural things you do. You just kind of, you do the work to push a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think that more creativity, that more art, that the world will be better, that we'll be happy in our families, that we'll treat people better, that our jobs will be better, that our countries won't be so divided. If people could just learn to experience the range better.
Yeah.
And not demonize the part they don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. And for all my fellow optimists,
yes.
it is okay to see the bad things.
Sure.
And like, it's okay to feel the bad emotions, and it's okay to feel the negativity around you.
Right.
Because then you have that contrast.
Right.
Like, you know, and so it's so important both ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to my fellow pessimists or realists, however you like to identify, it's okay to not be so upset. It's okay to see things, to reframe things and to wear rose-colored glasses sometimes, because both can just be exhausting. Mm-hmm. And to like reject your ability to live makes absolutely no sense. It's asinine.
Yeah, it is.
Life
is beautiful.
I just wanted to sneak asinine in there.
I think we just gave your listeners a free therapy session.
That's right, kids. So take your coloring books and you're going to just draw what you feel. Choose the color you feel most drawn to.
Man.
No, I'm just kidding. Man. But yeah, dude, I think this is a good place to wrap this.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
You don't want to talk about... You said you had one more question for me.
Oh,
I think we could probably get to it.
All right, let's do it. But we're already...
You're going to edit this down.
No, probably not too much. But either way, let's talk about one more thing.
Okay.
So I did want to just explore a little bit that... Well, really just kind of pick your brain on this, because I don't have too much to say about it as someone who hasn't recently moved anywhere.
Yeah.
But when you move...
Yes.
When you know, I think a ton of people experience this when they graduate college.
Yeah.
A ton of people experience it when they move out of their parents' house, or, you know, whatever situation you go through. When change happens in a proximity, in a locational way, how does that affect your creativity? Like recently, you moved from Joplin to Springfield, Illinois. And then back to Joplin. But Joplin is so different.
All within the last year. Like, we did all of that in the span of not even a year. Right. So that's also important.
And got married in the middle of coronavirus, which was crazy. Yeah. But either way, you've changed like all of these different locations and who you can be around, who you are around. Mm-hmm. How has that impacted your ability to see creatively? Like, does it create a freshness for you?
Yes.
Or does it create like a sense of like, I've done this before. Yep. You know, tell me about that.
Yeah, it has been beautiful. Because there's things I'm working on now back here in Joplin that I wouldn't have even considered doing while I was still in Springfield.
Because you weren't really doing filmmaking or any video stuff when you were here before, right?
Dabbling in things, but not to the degree that not to the degree
now
that
it's your job.
Now it's my job, and I'm doing a lot of stuff trying to on the side. And so
I see your hat up there.
This is my birthday present from my wife.
A24.
A24.
When you first told me about that, I thought it was 824.
Yeah, I know. We had a great conversation about
24. So anyway, if you don't know what that is, go check it out.
Yeah, they're just my favorite film production company. They make great movies. You've probably seen some A24 movies and you love them, and you don't know that it's A24.
Right. Kisses, hugs.
Yes, exactly. But anyway, there's so many things I'm doing now and I'm exploring now that I wouldn't have done while I was living in Springfield. Yeah. And it may not have been time yet either. Exactly. Not to say that maybe one day I wouldn't have done those things, but at least not in this moment in my life. And I think but there's importance in that. so yeah, just the fresh perspective and the new people I meet, new places I go, new streets I drive on, like all of those give you a sense of newness and a sense of, I wasn't feeling this where I was before.
Sure.
And I am now simply because I am here now. Yeah. And,
how does that relate to like obviously when you change proximity, you change who you're also in proximity to. So how have you seen that shift, even the way you relate to others? Because obviously now you're putting your effort in a different way into your days. Yeah. You're spending your energy differently. Have you seen that like change in the way you relate to other people? Have you seen that change in the way that you even think about creating because it impacts people differently? Like, have you explored that at all, or is it
maybe not
is it
so
sort
much?
Of just like, whoa, I didn't even see that was there?
Yeah, I think so. I think you kind of, I don't know if I've ever really thought about it.
It's a new door to knock on then.
Yes, exactly. I mean, I definitely, find things in new relationships with people and, working with new people, whether that's at work or just, even like we came back to a place where I already knew a lot of people, but like, I knew a lot of people not super deep.
Sure.
And so like now knowing that we're back here, it's like that's giving me kind of this like, oh, I know I'm going to be here for a while. Like I can actually invest in relationships that I might have established, before I moved or whatever. And so, yeah.
And you also left as a college student.
Yes.
Basically.
Yes.
And returned as an adult.
And that was weird.
There's something about the like hometown kid kind of impact thing that's like, it's just, sometimes it's just good to go away and come back.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it wasn't for very long, but man.
It was enough though.
It was enough to be able to come back and be like, life is different now.
Right.
And not in a bad way. In a way that I'm still constantly exploring and I constantly will be. But yeah.
Well, dude, that's so good. I hope that you just keep exploring ways to push your own range, because I think that the more you have a bigger range, the better you give to your community. Yeah. Whether that's through the things you create or just the person you exist as, the conversations you have, all that stuff. Like, so
absolutely.
This has been fun. This is good. I think that, just pushing on that contrast concept is, I'm going to chew on it the rest of the day, at least.
It was a good conversation.
I hope that people like it. And if people want to connect with you, maybe see like your journey, maybe even hear some of the things we've referenced, like pretty much I send everybody to Instagram, but I don't know if there's any other ways that you share stuff or if there's things people could follow to kind of keep a pulse on your creative journey. Where can they do that?
Right now, Instagram is the biggest thing I'm on. I mean, I'm working on a pretty big project right now that when it's done and ready, like obviously through Instagram, it'll be available or like it'll be, people can go there or see it, whatever. So
nice.
I'd just say Instagram. Yeah. Instagram, just my full name, Jared Scrowther, all lowercase.
Sweet. And if you can't find him, go to my page. I'm sure there'll be a photo or something and he'll be tagged.
And I'll be tagged in it. Yes.
You just do the little tippy tappy and clicky clacky.
Yes.
Whatever that means.
Clicky clacky.
Yeah.
Nice.
That's what phones make, right? Like,
yes. Only like, if you're one of those people who doesn't shut off the noise.
Yeah, I don't know how to do that. I don't have the tidy sound on.
Oh, man.
Man, that idea of contrast, of finding the lows and the shadows and being able to search down into that part of life, finding creativity there. But also for those of you who are more optimistic, maybe you don't relate to me as much in that, but the optimism, I love having optimists in my life because they push me in a direction that I don't naturally look. And as a creative person, I really don't want to be shoeholed into only living part of the life experience that I could be getting if I could get the full range. Because contrast really does make everything just that much better, that much sweeter, that much richer. And so whichever side of the spectrum you land on, it doesn't really matter. Just push into the idea of contrast and the idea of growth. And yeah, that's really all I have to say. And like I said in the podcast, if you are too tired to do that work right now, rest is okay too. So as always, creatives, you know I gotta say it, but first, don't forget to like, subscribe, and check out the playlist if you really liked this podcast. But as always, stay creative. See ya.